Hey y'all. Today I want to talk about not really propagating different types of roses, but this one specifically. This is a yellow rose, and it's called Lady Banks. I had bought one for a friend of mine at Home Depot in late spring. I think it was late spring, could have been early summer. And it was, they already had it climbing up a pole. It was probably about 3 foot tall. And it was going to be a few weeks before I was going to see my friend. So I thought, why don't I just try to take some cuttings off of this and see if I can propagate it. So I took some cuttings, but I took several actually. But the problem was with rose cuttings, you need to be taking the ones that are semi-hardwood. And so I didn't want to cut it back too far so it would look bad. So I took some of the newer growth. But I did end up getting one that was a little farther down and had enough of the semi-hardwood to where, and basically semi-hardwood is like what would be the end of the previous year's growth, or the growth at the very end of the season as you're going into winter. Um, Not the tips, a little farther down the stem. And so I went ahead and the easiest way that I've found to propagate roses for me, I know there's different ways that people do it, but for me, the easiest way that I've found is to take like a 2 liter Coke bottle, and which is what you can see. This one is in, and you cut it about half. Cut it in half, and then take the top part, put your cuttings in, the dirt and your cuttings. You want to poke some drain holes in the bottom, 3 or 4 drain holes, because you don't want it. If they're sitting in water, they're gonna rot, and so, that's my experience. And so you cut it in half, and then you take this top part after you put your cuttings in, and you would stick it over it, and you want to leave the lid off. You don't want to put the lid on it, because that way you can water it, and um, and as it rains, it will water it. And really, I don't even think I poured water in this, but maybe one time all summer. And so after a few weeks, I could see that most of the cuttings didn't make it, because, like I said, they were the very new growth. And so, but there was this one, and it was starting to leaf out with new leaves. So I left it in this with that lid on it for probably about I'm gonna say 3 to 4 weeks. And then when I saw it was putting on new growth, I pulled the top off, and just brought it to where it could get a little more sunlight, because you don't want to put it in sunlight when you're trying to root it. I actually sat it beside of, in the shade. I just sat it in the shade. And so, anyways, you can see this one it's actually growing pretty good. So I think I'm going to go ahead and plant it, because we still have several weeks for it to develop a little more, some root growth in the ground once I plant it. We still have several more weeks before we have our first frost, because we usually don't get one until toward the end of October, and we're in mid-September right now. And so I'm going to plant it, and this one is supposed to be extremely vigorous. So, I mean, but you don't, with this one, it blooms on old growth, the way I understand it. I've never grown this one before. and I don't know anybody personally who has this one. So uh, I'm just going by, the research that I've done on it. And so and it's a thornless rose, which makes it even more wonderful because, if you have roses, you need to prune them because most roses bloom off of new growth. And so to get the more blooms, you need to cut them back, and you can get stuck pretty good. I mean, depending on what kind of rose it is, but this one really don't have to worry about that because it's thornless. And this is actually the first rose I've ever had that is thornless. So I'm excited about getting to grow this one. The only problem is they say that it's so vigorous. Okay, on the label that came with it, it said it would grow up to 20 feet. But there's a white one also. This one's the yellow one. There's a white one also, and it can grow up to 40 foot. And so I'm assuming this one can grow, I'm guessing it'll grow bigger than 20 foot, especially because I'm in a zone where it may not even lose its leaves during the wintertime. It says if you're in a zone 8 or up, it'll be an evergreen in your area. So if that's the case, it's probably going to get bigger than 20 foot. Uh, but I think I'm going to enjoy this rose, and I just wanted to let y'all know how easy it is to propagate a rose by doing it with the 2-liter bottle method. It's the easiest way that I've found, and I've tried propagating roses, several different ways. And this one's just kind of, hands off for the most part. Once you take your cuttings and stick them in the dirt and put the lid, the top part back on it, you really don't have to mess with it. Just look at it from time to time, especially if you're doing it in the summertime when it's the hot, hot part of the summer. Look at it from time to time and see if it's starting to dry out, because you don't want it to dry completely out. You want it to stay moist. And you just pour a little bit of water in the top, and that's really all you do. And once you start seeing, new leaves coming on it, you can pull the top off and move it, to where it can get a little more sun. This one actually gets full sun now, and it has for, I don't know, the past probably 3 to 4 weeks, because I've waited to let it grow. I didn't want to plant it while it was still really small, and I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of roots. I mean, they're starting to grow up the side now. So this one's definitely ready. This one's definitely ready to plant up, to plant in the ground or in a pot. I don't think I would want to attempt to plant this one in a pot because it's just going to get too big. But I think I'm going to enjoy it on the trellis. I'm going to plant it on the trellis that I've got in front of one of my greenhouses. Of course, I know that, in a year or 2, maybe 3, it's probably going to completely take over the trellis, and I'm going to have to cut some of it back. But like I said, according to the research I've done, it blooms on old growth. So if you need to prune this one once it gets bigger, then you want to do it immediately after it's done blooming, because it'll go ahead and be setting its buds for the next year, the next blooming season, and you don't want to cut all your buds off. And so, but I'll keep you updated on how this one does, and if it turns out to be an evergreen in my area. But anyways, that was just something I thought before I planted it that I would show y'all, because, I mean, I bought my friend a plant, and I was able to, make 2 out of it. And this one wasn't cheap. I mean, it was fairly expensive. And so when you're able to do that, it makes you not feel like you've wasted a ton of money. And so, anyways, until next time, bye.